Well, hi. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful afternoon to join us in dedicating an exciting piece of art, a mural that recalls what began here just a couple steps away from where we are right now a century ago. So here's how the story begins. Robert M. Bell grew up with retail in his blood. He was one of 9 children whose father owned a general store in Moultrie, Georgia. But crop failure from the boll weevil destroyed the economy of South Georgia. So when he grew up, he headed for Florida in 1910, returning only to reclaim his sweetheart and bring her back to Florida as his bride. The couple lived in a turpentine camp. Must have been very pleasant before screens or air conditioning. Probably didn't have fans. A turpentine camp outside of Ocala, where he operated the commissary. In 1914, they moved down to Palmetto, where he worked with relatives in the Globe General Store. And wasn't long at all before he decided to strike out on his own. Bell saw opportunity on the south bank of the Manatee River in the fast-growing pioneer community of Bradenton, whose population had exploded from 500 people in 1900 to over 3,700 people in 1915. At the age of 22, he established his own store in the building right here. It was an ideal location just about a block from what was then the bank of the river, where a long wooden pier connected to the steamboats that would take passengers to Palmetto, Anna Maria, and mainly to Tampa. The second floor of this building held the St. James Hotel. He opened the Dollar Limit store for business in April of 1915. Bell put nearly all of his money into merchandise. So when the goods arrived on the train from up north, he turned over the empty wooden packing crates that they came in, turned them over, and used them for his display tables. Now this is a quote, "Where a dollar does its duty, nothing in our store ever costs more than $1." The April 22 of 1915 Manatee River Journal, which later morphed into the Bradenton Herald, announced the new store. And it continues, "We opened for business in Bradenton only a few days ago, but we have been busy every minute of the time waiting on a rushing trade that many an old and established concern would envy. There's a reason. People in Bradenton need a store like ours where you couldn't pay more than $1 for any article, even if you wanted to. This doesn't mean that we sell cheap goods. We sell good goods cheap." Well, people agreed, and as the cliche goes, the rest is history. So with that, I'd now like to invite someone who knows a lot more about this than I do. I'd like to invite Bob Bell to say a few words.
Well, I can see that we should have coordinated this a little better because that destroyed about 90% of what I was going to say. But that's just as well. It's good to see Wayne Poston, our mayor, here. We go back a long way to Bradenton Herald days and the old days, and it's all of this is all about continuity and community, I think, really, when it comes down to it. What could I say about my grandfather? Bill covered so much of it, but I will say that he was very passionate about the community. When he came here and established the business, he got involved in the Kiwanis Club and starting the Kiwanis Club. Hi, Eileen. And that was a major thing. And then he was very instrumental in starting the trailer park, which became, as you know, the world's largest trailer park right here in Bradenton. Sometimes I sort of wished he'd put it in his own name and not the Kiwanis Club's name, but be that as it may. But we were here to celebrate this 100th anniversary, and I guess the other thing I would say is that he founded or he promoted his way into bringing the first Major League Baseball team to this town, And there's a picture in my office of this group of people who in their fedoras and their long coats getting off the train and alighting in Bradenton. And God knows what they must have thought when they saw Bradenton at that point in time. But his idea, of course, was that we would bring the team here, and that would bring the winter visitors here, and that would provide more business for everyone and more growth. And that is indeed what happened. I remember the downtown store very clearly, as I probably should have, because I was the window washer of that store. And it was a store that had probably as much merchandise upstairs in the attic that went up at the end of the season and never saw the light of day again as we had on the ground floor. But he was he bought plenty of merchandise, and I think no one was ever short of merchandise that came into the store. That store is now under the courthouse, the nice new big courthouse. So it's very hard to see, but it's there, and in spirit anyway. And when we sold that to the county for the courthouse, I went to my dad and I said, it would really be nice to take this money and put it into scholarships, a foundation for scholarships for needy students and for employee kids and that sort of thing. And so he readily agreed, and we put the money into that foundation, and it's grown over time, and we've put many children, or not children, but many young people through college. Beverly, where are you? So how many kids are we up to having put through college now? Close to 500, so yeah. So I think my 5 minutes is about up, but our granddad, as we all know, started this downtown store. My dad came along after the war and worked with my grandfather in the downtown store up until the early to mid 50s, when Publix came along and said, would you like to open a store out Manatee Avenue? We're going to call it Westgate Shopping Center. And my grandfather said no. He said, downtown will always be where business is. And my father said, yeah, it's a good idea. So they amicably split up, and my dad went out to Westgate and ran that store, which Publix never even asked for a lease for. So kind of amazing. So we went in for, I think, $1.25 or $1 a square foot or something like that. And then every time that my dad got a chance and had the money, he would open another store where Publix was opening a new shopping center. So that's really how we got our start. And that worked out very well. And we're still doing it. We're getting close to 500 stores, I guess, now. So that's my story. And now, Bill, who does it go to? Steve Nopik, our CEO.
On behalf of the entire team in the stores, the offices, the distribution centers, I want to just say how proud we are and how thankful we are for how this community has embraced and honored us on our 100th year. We work awfully hard every day, and it means a lot when you're recognized, and we thank you for that. Most of you know that we are by nature a low-profile group, so pulling off anything like this, like a 100th year series of celebrations, is certainly a stretch for us. But I have to say that, any reflection on our history is really a story of three leaders. Certainly Papa Bell, who we honor today, I think it was his determination. Certainly his determination was one of his key characteristics. His belief in living up to his commitments, even if it was difficult to do so, and even when there were probably times he wanted to throw in the towel. And as Bob said, his love of the community and his drive to do something about it. Bob mentioned E.R. Bell, his dad. And E.R. Bell, at a time when Florida was changing in the 50s and 60s, developed a pretty clear vision of what the future could be. He had a strong belief that Bealls could be so much more than just one small store in downtown Bradenton, and he oversaw the growth of Bealls to become a statewide success. E.R. Bell was a very quiet man, but certainly one of the smartest and savviest guys that I've ever worked with. And certainly Bob Bell, we're so pleased and honored to work for him. I've worked for him for 30 years. It's really been a great time. But from the foundation that his dad and his grandfather established, Bob built a successful and I would say disciplined retailing operation that today has more than 525 stores. I think Bob's fingerprints on the business are clear. He started the outlet in 1987 and oversaw its growth outside of Florida into a multi-state force. Outlet is now a very significant player in off-price retailing. Those of you who follow the industry know that off-price is probably one of the hottest segments in retailing now. And Bob also has pushed us to aggressively invest in the development of the online business. And BeallsFlorida.com and now our outlet site, BerksOutlet.com, are evidence of that push. And Bob modernized the business, I would say, and attracted a great group of people, a number of whom are here today. And he helped to create an atmosphere in which people can thrive. If you work hard, you can thrive at Bealls. You know, as I was thinking about what to say at this event, my mind was drawn to the theme of one of my all-time favorite movies. You'll probably know what it is. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. And you probably have seen it. You know that the protagonist was George Bailey, and he got a chance to see what life in his community would be like had he not lived there. So I'd ask you to stop for a minute and think about what Bradenton might be like had Bealls and these three great leaders not been here. A few things that come to mind. 2,500 people today work for our company. I wonder whether those people would be here with their families in this town at this time. Over the past 50 years, we've invested nearly, it's a big number, $250 million in stores and in equipment, desks, chairs, buildings, stores in Manatee County alone. How many people in our community work for businesses that serviced Bealls over the years and waited on its employees in restaurants and checked us out at stores? As Bob mentioned, think about the Pittsburgh Pirates in spring training. Papa Bell started us down that path in the early days. And Bob mentioned the Bradenton Kiwanis, another of Papa Bell's passions. I've always said this, and I think it's true, but I think the Bradenton Kiwanis is probably one of the most prolific Kiwanis clubs in the world. Yeah. And finally, I wonder about those 500 or so kids that have gotten college scholarships from Bealls Foundations over the last 25 years. What a lasting impact those scholarships have had. So those are, just a few little things that think. If Bealls hadn't been here, if these three great leaders, if these families hadn't been here, that may not have happened in this community or at all. And I'm sure there are countless more stories. Maybe Bealls has touched you in some way over the years, and if so, we're so happy for that experience. So in closing, on behalf of all the associates and employees of our company, thanks for honoring us. It really means a lot. Mayor Poston?
Well, thank you all for being here. It's an honor for Bradenton to honor Bealls' department store and what they've brought to this community. As Bob said, we go back a long way and worked together at Bradenton Kiwanis, and I was at the newspaper and he was working Bealls, and things have just grown in the way that we think makes a community successful, and Bealls has been a really big part of that. I was going to go home and change my shirt after spring training, but Papa Bell, he brought the team here, so I might as well wear the clothing. But anyway, it's a really terrific day. We're honored to do this. It fits in this way with Realize Bradenton, our Arts and Culture Initiative, Jeanette. So this fits in with what we're trying to do. And I want to say one thing personally about this. You know, it's often said that genius skips a generation. This is a family that proves that doesn't always work out. Everybody working did a terrific job, and everyone made it better. So thank you.
I got to say that R.M. Bell III is right there, and he's not
That's the fourth?
he's
fourth
the
go.
fourth generation,
Perfect.
the third R.M. Bell.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. So, back to you. And Betty and I are going to do something together here.
That's right.
I want to say one other thing personally. Of those scholarships, a woman named Stacy Poston, who was my daughter, was the recipient of one of those.
All right. Tell us how, Bob. Jump down and do something. Okay, how did you do? Tell it down. Well, give us a 1, 2, 3, and we'll take it off.
1, 2, 3. You are now looking at End of Day by internationally known muralist John Allenson, who has done a beautiful job with this. And at this point, I would like to ask John to come forward and say a word or two. Thank you.
I had 100,000 words this morning. I've now edited it down to 28. I have to say this is very close to my heart because it's close to a pub. That makes all the difference when you're painting on the street, okay? And you know, we're going through all this stuff and the pub beer is getting warm and stale, and anyway, we'll go through it. I just like to say as much as an artist, I'm a conservationist. I worked at Hampton Court Palace for the Queen of England and got involved in a lot of conservation projects over the years. What I've written down here is really of no consequence other than this is what I believe. And I believe that cultural identity is the cornerstone of society. I really truly believe in that. And if there's anything to do with education, that's what we should be teaching our children, because it's a wonderful counterplay against the terrible politics that pervade the world. So my own children and my grandchildren have got to put up with this stuff all the time from me. However, as my grandson said to me, who lives in England, and he's 8 years old, we went home last year, and he said, "Granddad, I realize now where America is." He said, "It's a long way away." And he said, "You promised me your watch when you die." He said, "What if you die and they don't find you? What happens to my watch?" So I believe I have an imagination, obviously, and when Bob Bell first walked along this street, he must have done it with all the gusto of the pioneer, bringing with him the trappings of creativity, ingenuity, imagination, and a free spirit. And that's where cultural creativity leaves us, and we should be proud to carry that on. I think Bealls have done that, and this is how I see Bealls. I think he saw an opportunity in a burgeoning community such as Bradenton, was part of a parcel of both culture and transient culture, and there's a difference. I did a TV program once about transient culture in Florida, and I said, you really have to look into that culture to find people like Bob Bell, who opened up the street and the community and gave everybody a chance to be equal and to do things that would benefit themselves and the community. It happened in Wales, where I come from, and I've been involved in that for many years, and now I'm very grateful for having been accepted in this community and asked to do something to add to that feeling. Bealls to me is the epitome of cultural exchange, an exchange between culture and the community through the auspices of the stores that they own and that they operate. Now that's spread from Florida throughout other states, and I think that's the way to go. Getting somewhat away from the old stymie political attitude there where you have set pieces, the community, the stores and the marketing, where suddenly you've got people like these good people who really mean every word they say, and I don't know them, but they do. It's very obvious to me. At that point, I'm going to let the rest of it go, but I just want to say thank you for allowing me to do this.
Wow. Well, there's certainly a lot of changes and a lot of challenges in 100 years. Once again, I'd just like to join the others with a final thanks. I'd like to thank Betty Bell, daughter of R.M. Bell, whose father came here 100 years ago for pulling down the plastic. I'd like to thank the mayor for holding up his end, doing the same. Thanks for being here today, and thanks to a community whose support helped make this little old dry goods store with recycled fixturing the tremendous success that it grew to become. And I'm just grateful to say that in 2015, we can all still look forward to a great future, just as Robert Bell did a century ago. Thank you.
It means a lot. We're proud of what has been done through the years, and we've all been a part of it. And I started out working in the Manatee Avenue store when I was a teenager, and I later on the board of directors. And every family member has had some part of it, and a lot of other very good people that were not family members have made big contributions as well.
Oh yeah. I think it's very much a synergistic thing where we're able to help the community, and certainly the community is the source of our existence. You know, we felt very proud when we could start our foundation with, as I explained, with the sale of the downtown store, putting that money into education for needy kids and also for employees' children that needed the money. And I wasn't after funding the straight A students so much as, the B and C students, the kids that might not get the greatest scholarships. Oh, well, the painting sort of, I think, just commemorates really the old days in this community when my granddad started the business 100 years ago. And it's just evokes a feeling of those days, I think.
Yeah, arts and culture and design on everything that we do is a critical part of our decision-making process. Realize Bradenton, which is our arts and culture initiative, has been a big piece. You can see the Riverwalk, and it's not only useful, it's gorgeous. And that's one thing that we do. We say everything we do in Bradenton, design's a critical element. The old pink hotel, that's now the new hotel, looks beautiful because we maintained that design. It's important to us. Arts and culture is what part of Bradenton's heart is. Well, and we think that what Papa Bell did was not just a department store. He bought into the community and said, I'm going to build community. That's really what we try to do in Bradenton and Bradenton's government. That's our role. We're to build this community, not just get along in it. And he brought Major League Baseball here. He bought the trailer park, which brought the tourists, which put Bradenton on the map. Beautiful Manatee River. It was just this year we took advantage of that, but he understood how important it was, but he understood it for commerce. And that's what we're doing on the Riverwalk. It's for economic development. So we're just carrying on the tradition.
I'm an artist, been an artist for all my life, but professionally for about 40 years. I'm also a building surveyor, worked for the government, worked for the Queen, did stuff like that. Traveled around the world, got involved, went in the army, walked to Nepal after I came out of the army, went to North Africa after the Algerian War, worked there. I'm that old. Well, I started mural painting probably 40 years ago for a Heineken over in Gibraltar, and I was doing some architectural detailing there, and then they wanted someone to do a mural, and I said I can do it, and we had a deal, and I did it, and they were happy, and they paid me, and then I said, hey, there's money in this. Well, I was doing a mural over in Somodina across the street a couple of years ago, and I was up scaffold doing a column, and then Bill Webster walked past on a lunch break and said, what are you doing? So then we got together and we had a pint together, and I said, well, why didn't you do something for your centenary? And a year later or 18 months later, he said, yeah, we're going to do it. And that's how it came off. This is roughly this street here, Old Main Street, 100 years ago. So roughly speaking, that's what it looked like. In fact, the guy holding that big gar crocodile, big gar alligator, that's what they used to cash and sell on the street. And just where you're standing there, this was the stockade where they kept all the cattle on their way to Cuba. So if I'd had a bit more space, I would have gone and done that as well, you know, and painted the cattle in the enclosure. But that was what life might have been like. And then, of course, on the other side of the mural, we've got the steamer that came in and picked passengers up and took them to Tampa and stuff like that, and around to Anna Maria, and did the island hopping. So I just kind of started to work on it, and I started putting people in, and it just went from there. It's like a storyline, you know. Yeah, just life on the street. And you know what it's like, people on the street don't wear, you know, crinoline dresses and drive pretty little bicycles. They go in the bars and they run cocaine and they have rum runners and they do all that stuff. Come on, let's get truthful. It happened then more than it does now, you know? So you know, I try to paint the street as it is, because I was born on the street. I came from the street, and I know all the people. I recognize and understand people on the street, you know? So I think I can put that into it when I'm painting. Yeah, because let's face it, the population was made up of immigrants, and then it moved along, and then little communities set up here. People came from all over the Caribbean and settled here, and it was probably a multi-racial community which thrived and became what it is today. The difference in those days that there wasn't the big social stigma, there wasn't the political stigma, and you know, I've had friends since I was a young kid of every race, color, and nationality. So I think I put that into my work as well. I want them to remember that they're here because of those people on the street, because generations came after each other, and that things are no different, and you may have money or you may not have money, but at the end of the day, we're all coming from the same stock. So let's stop kidding ourselves. So I want people to remember, that's why the people who live on the street, when I was doing it, they were coming up and talking, hey man, good on you. I always had that because I've got a lot of friends like that. So that's how I am. I'm a level person. I'm not over there or I'm not over there. And I try to put that in my work. So I'm making a social statement, I guess.